Dödsförtkum. Title: The Echo in the Gallery. What would you say to the man who holds the fate of your past in his hands? For Talia, saving a museum wasn't just about art, it was about memory legacy. And the last promise she made to someone she loved, Talia. Quinn clutched the cream-colored envelope so tightly it crinkled in her hand. The weight of the night pressed on her chest like a too-tight gown. Somewhere between the champagne flutes and chamber music, the future of the Eldridge Museum balanced on a whisper. She scanned the glittering ballroom, gilded ceilings, laughter too loud, faces too polished, and there, surrounded by admiration and empty flattery, stood Silas Everhart. He looked exactly how power tends to look: sharp lines, polished edges, a smile that never reached his eyes. "There he is, Neve," murmured beside her. "Do what you came to do, but gently." Talia nodded, though her heartbeat betrayed her calm. The letter from yesterday echoed in her head. Demolition approved. 3 months until history became rubble. She weaved through the room, ignoring the swirls of silk and scent of expensive cologne. She wasn't here to impress. She was here because the place that raised her, that saved her, was being taken apart, brick by brick. When she finally reached him, she waited at the edge of his circle, invisible until she spoke. "Mr. Everhart," she said, voice steadier than her hands. "Talia." "Quinn?" From the Eldridge, his eyes found hers, cool, sharp. He didn't recognize her face, just what she stood for. "Of course," he replied, amused. "I was wondering if someone from the Eldridge would try to interrupt my evening. I was hoping," she said, stepping closer, "you might consider sparing a century of memory." His jaw tensed, just enough. "It's a building, nothing more. The land is worth more, empty. I'm not here to talk about numbers." "Then you're wasting time," he said, checking his watch. "You've got 60 seconds. She took a breath that felt like a lifetime. "The Eldridge is more than walls. It holds pieces of who we were. Paintings that changed the country, sculptures that told stories before we had words, and memories ones you can't measure in square footage." He didn't flinch, so she leaned in closer. "My grandmother lives in assisted care. The only thing that lights her eyes anymore is the walk she takes every Thursday just to visit the wing she helped build. You won't just be erasing art. You'll be erasing what's left of her." Something shifted in him. He looked at her. Not through her, not past her, but at her. "What's her name? Eleanor Quinn?" "She donated the modernist wing." Silas went still. He studied her face, again, slower this time, as if brushing off old dust from a frame. "He once knew Camille Quinn was your mother." The name hit her like wind through an open door. "She died when I was 7. How do you—" Silas didn't answer the question. Instead, he said something that made her breath catch. "I have an idea, Miss Quinn, but it's going to sound unorthodox." Continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart. His voice dropped quieter now, but waited. "I'm offering you a way out. A solution that benefits us both and saves your museum." Talia blinked. "What kind of solution?" Silas met her gaze evenly. "Marry me." She let out a laugh, sharp, incredulous, until she saw he wasn't joking. "You can't be serious. Completely serious. 1 year. A marriage of convenience. In return, I'll halt the demolition and set up an endowment to ensure Eldridge's future permanently." Her breath caught. "This is insane. We barely know each other." "You don't need to know me," he said, his tone sharpening. "You only need to decide how far you're willing to go to save what matters to you." She shook her head. "You could just donate, no strings. No theatrical conditions." "I could," he agreed, "but I won't." Before she could respond, he handed her a small card, his private number embossed in silver. "Call me when you're ready. But the offer expires at midnight." After that, the Eldridge is history. Then he turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the quiet alcove, the card trembling between her fingers. 20 minutes later, Talia stood on the balcony, city lights glittering below, her phone clenched in her hand. The card felt heavier now, like it knew something she didn't want to admit. Her grandmother's medical bills were rising every month. The museum's fate had already been sealed in every legal document she couldn't afford to challenge. 60 staff members would lose their livelihoods. Her thumb hovered over the call button. "Did you find Everhart?" Neve's voice came from behind. "Any progress?" Talia didn't turn. She just stared at the number in her hand. He made an offer, a pause, a ridiculous one. That night in a penthouse that overlooked the sleeping city, Talia sat stiffly on an all-white leather sofa. Her hands locked in her lap. 1 year, she repeated, and everything in writing before anything official happens. Silas stood by the bar, swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass. Of course. Separate bedrooms. I won't be playing the doting wife. You'll be expected at key events. Beyond that, your time is yours. She stared at him. Why me? Why this? His expression didn't change. Let's just say, I owe a debt to my mother, and this helps repay it. You knew her. He turned away, setting down his glass. That's a story for another night. Then do we have a deal? Talia thought of her grandmother's soft voice, the gallery walls echoing with footsteps, the smell of old paper and paint, the people who gave their lives to beauty and history, and the museum that might vanish without her choice. She closed her eyes. Yes, the word felt like something she had swallowed too fast, like a small betrayal lodged between her ribs. Silas gave a tight smile. Welcome to the family, Ms. Quinn. 3 weeks later, she stood in a quiet dressing room inside Cambridge City Hall, facing her own reflection. The dress she wore was simple, cream elegant in a way that didn't draw attention, appropriate for a ceremony that wasn't quite a wedding and not quite anything else. Her dark hair fell in loose waves, her face looked composed, but the shadows under her eyes told the truth. A knock on the door made her flinch. 5 minutes. Miss Quinn came, the chirpy voice of the wedding coordinator, blissfully unaware of what today really meant. Talia inhaled deeply. Her signature on the contract from the day before had unlocked a $5 million endowment for the museum. Another $5 million would follow after a year. A separate trust had been arranged for her grandmother's care. On paper, she had secured everything. So why did it feel like she was walking toward something final, not a beginning, but a kind of quiet end, continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart? The ceremony room was nearly silent, too small to echo, but large enough to feel hollow. There were only 4 people present, the justice of the peace. Silas's attorney, Neve, standing quietly at Talia's side. And Silas himself, he stood in a charcoal suit that fit like armor, expression, unreadable posture. Perfect. Too perfect. You look lovely, he said, his tone devoid of warmth, like reading from a script. Thank you, she replied, voice just as hollow. The ceremony moved forward like something underwater. Words were spoken, promises, exchanged promises she didn't believe in, to a man she barely knew. A platinum ring slid onto her finger. It felt cold, too tight, like a band forged for binding, not belonging. And when the final words were said, husband and wife, Silas leaned in and pressed a kiss to her lips. It was brief, cool, mechanical, their first touch. Congratulations, Neve whispered as she hugged her. Afterward, concern soft in her eyes. Are you sure about this? Talia's reply was barely a breath. I'm sure about saving the museum. Outside, no one waited. No rice, no music, no family. Just a black car and a binding agreement. The ride to Silas's Cambridge estate was 30 minutes of silence, so thick it pressed against her chest. When they arrived, Talia couldn't stop the soft gasp that escaped her lips. The estate was massive, an old Victorian mansion wrapped in wrought iron gates and climbing ivy. It felt like a place out of time. This house has belonged to my family for 4 generations, Silas said as the car circled the driveway. You'll have the east wing to yourself. Inside, a middle-aged woman greeted them with a warm smile. Welcome home, Mr. and Mrs. Everhart. It's a pleasure. Mrs. Langford is our housekeeper, Silas explained. She'll help you settle in. Once Mrs. Langford disappeared down the hallway, Talia turned to him. Rooms plural, she asked. He raised an eyebrow, the faintest smirk tugging at his mouth. Did you think we'd be sharing one? I didn't know what to think, she admitted. None of this is exactly conventional. That much is true, he said simply, then gestured for her to follow. They climbed a grand staircase, its railing gleaming beneath the chandelier light. Portraits of Everharts long gone lined the walls, faces stern, unsmiling, watching them pass like judges. He stopped at a set of wide double doors and pushed them open. Inside was a sitting room, larger than her apartment, filled with soft chairs, shelves of old books, and warm afternoon light spilling through tall windows. Beyond that, a bedroom with a 4-poster bed and drapes, like something from a film. It's beautiful, she said, surprised by the softness in her voice. Mrs. Langford has already arranged your things, he replied. Dinner is at 7. In the formal dining room, he turned to leave Silas, she said, stopping him. He paused at the door, but didn't turn around. We should talk about tonight. He finally turned, face unreadable. What about it? It's our wedding night. He stepped closer, but only slightly. I need to know your expectations, she said. He studied her for a moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. This is a business arrangement, he said. I expect nothing that wasn't already outlined. You have your space, I have mine, so we won't. She trailed off. He shook his head. No, that was never part of the deal. Relief swept through her, and beneath it, something else, something like disappointment. But she buried it quickly. I see, she said. Thank you for being clear. Unless he said slowly, watching her closely, you had other expectations. No, she answered too quickly. Not at all. For the first time, his face softened slightly. A small, ironic smile curved his lips, and it changed him, made him look almost human. Then I'll see you at dinner. Mrs. Everhart. He closed the door behind him, leaving her alone with her thoughts and a quiet, growing confusion. Dinner was served in a room large enough to host a banquet. They sat at opposite ends of a long mahogany table. The silence between them stretched like the tablecloth, heavy and impossible to fold away. Mrs. Langford brought out course after course, soup, salad, roast dessert, but Talia could barely taste any of it. The food was exquisite, the moment was not, and somewhere inside her, the weight of what she'd agreed to began to settle. Not in her mind, but in her bones, continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart. They ate in near silence, the ticking of the antique clock louder than cutlery against porcelain. Then out of nowhere, Silas spoke. Tell me about your work at the museum. Talia looked up, startled, her fork pausing midair. I'm the assistant curator of American modernism, she said carefully. Placing her utensils down, I focus on early 20th century painting and sculpture, Silas. Gave a small nod. You must be very skilled to hold that kind of position at your age. I've worked hard, she replied, her voice quiet but steady. Art's always been the one thing that made sense to me. She hesitated. My mother encouraged it. At the mention of her mother, Silas's expression shifted barely, but enough. He reached for his wine, buying a moment. Your mother was remarkable. Talia narrowed her gaze. You keep saying that, but you haven't explained how you knew her? No, he said, rising from his chair and placing his napkin beside the plate. I haven't. He turned toward the doorway. Would you join me for a nightcap in the library? The library looked like something out of another century. 2 stories of bookshelves stretched to the ceiling, a ladder resting on iron rails. A fire cracked quietly in the stone hearth. Leather chairs invited comfort. Though the tension between them remained sharp, Silas poured 2 glasses of brandy. He handed one to Talia and sat across from her. "I met your mother once," he said, after a long silence. 15 years ago. It was brief, but meaningful. How meaningful, she asked. Eyes locked on his. A long pause. "That's a story for another night." He raised his glass. "To new beginnings." She didn't lift hers. "Is this how it's going to be?" she asked. "You making cryptic remarks about my mother and dodging questions." His face hardened. "Our agreement was clear. The museum is saved. Your grandmother is safe. My reasons for all this are mine." "That's not fair." "Life isn't." He stood, leaving his drink untouched on the side table. "I have an early meeting tomorrow. Good night, Talia." She lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of her cavernous bedroom. Sleep would not come. She was married to a man who felt like a stranger, yet somehow he knew things about her family. She didn't. She lived in a house that looked like it belonged in a novel, surrounded by ghosts, painted in oil, and halls too quiet for comfort. The ring on her finger shimmered in the moonlight, a thin band that weighed more than it should. Mrs. Everhart. The name sounded foreign in her mind, a costume she hadn't asked to wear, and yet the only kiss they'd shared, formal brief, still lingered in her thoughts, not because of how it felt, but because of how much it didn't. She wondered just for a second what a real kiss from Silas might be like. That thought, more than anything else, kept her awake until morning. 2 weeks into the arrangement, a rhythm had begun to form. Mornings she buried herself in museum work, responding to curators and planning virtual exhibits. Afternoons, she wandered the mansion's long hallways, discovering tucked-away balconies and empty rooms that hadn't seen laughter in decades. Evenings were the hardest. On the nights Silas joined her for dinner, conversation was sparse and stiff. On most nights, he didn't show up at all. Tonight made the 3rd evening in a row she ate alone. She pushed a piece of salmon across her plate, appetite long gone. "Mrs. Langford," she asked gently, as the housekeeper entered, "does my husband often work this late?" The older woman hesitated, then answered carefully, "Mr. Everhart keeps unusual hours, always has at least, since I came here 5 years ago." Talia tilted her head, and before that, Mrs. Langford's expression softened. "I believe he was much the same, though his parents were more traditional." That was the first time Talia had heard anything about them. His parents. "They passed the woman," said quietly, crossing herself. "Just over 15 years ago, a terrible accident." She offered a small nod. "If you'll excuse me, I need to finish up in the kitchen." The door clicked softly behind her, and once again Talia was left alone. In a house full of silence, married to a man full of secrets, wondering what else she didn't know about the life she'd just stepped into. Continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart 15 years ago. That was when Silas claimed he met her mother. That was also the year his parents died. Coincidence, perhaps, but something about it tugged at the edges of Talia's instincts. The trouble was Silas was almost never around long enough for her to ask that night. Restless and full of unanswered questions, she wandered beyond her wing of the house. The west wing, his wing. Unlike her space with its light fabrics and muted tones, his side of the mansion was steeped in mahogany leather and shadows, a colder kind of beauty. At the end of a long corridor, one door stood closed tight, deliberate, unlike the others, that sat open like forgotten pages. Curiosity edged out caution. She reached for the handle. Locked. Looking for something. She spun around, heart jolting. Silas stood just feet away. His tie was loosened, and his expression unreadable, except for the flicker In his narrowed eyes, I was just exploring, she said, flushed. I didn't think you were home tonight. Clearly his gaze flicked to the locked door. That room is private. I'm sorry, she murmured, stepping back. What's inside? He paused. Things that don't concern you. There was no harshness in his voice, but the wall was back. Firm, polished, unreachable. When he saw the look on her face, his tone softened slightly. Not everything in this house is yours to explore. She met his gaze. Nothing in this house is mine, she said quietly. I'm just passing through, remember? Something shifted behind his eyes. Regret, maybe. But whatever it was, he buried it fast. How was your day? He asked, changing the subject. I reviewed the new exhibition plans, she said. Thanks to your endowment, the Eldridge is expanding its American modernism section. He gave a curt nod. Good. And with that, he turned and walked past her, down the hall, Silas. She called softly. He stopped. Didn't turn, Mrs. Langford mentioned. Your parents died 15 years ago. Was that when you met my mother? His shoulders went tense. Did it have anything to do with their deaths? A long pause. It's late. I have work to finish. Then he disappeared around the corner, leaving the question to echo behind him. The next morning, Talia found a note, slid under her door. Neat, deliberate handwriting. Harrington Foundation Gala. Tomorrow evening, wear something formal. Car at 7 p.m. No name, no greeting, no signature. So very Silas, she sighed, it would be their first public appearance as husband and wife. That afternoon, while searching for a book in the library, she climbed the rolling ladder to the top shelf as she reached for a volume. Her fingers knocked something loose. A small photograph slipped out from behind the books and fluttered to the floor. She climbed down quickly and picked it up. Her breath caught. It was a picture of a much younger Silas, frail in a hospital bed. Seated beside him, a woman in a white coat, her face unmistakable. Her mother, Isabella Quinn. Talia's hands trembled. Proof he had known her. Intimately enough to keep this hidden in his private library. Before she could study it further, she heard the front door open. Panicked, she tried to return the photo to its hiding place, but it slipped again, vanishing between the books, just as Silas's voice echoed from the entry. She rushed down the ladder, heart hammering. A moment later, he appeared in the doorway. I need to speak with you. His tone was clipped. All business. The Harrington Gala. Tomorrow matters. People will be watching, Talia nodded, forcing her voice steady. I understand. I'll play my part. His eyes narrowed. Something wrong? No, oh, no. Too quick, too sharp, just nervous. First time stepping out as Mrs. Everhart. He studied her face for a long moment. Don't be. Just stay close. Smile when it matters. And if anyone asks about us, I'll deflect, she said, gracefully. He gave a small nod. Good, then turned to leave. But as he walked away, Talia's hand brushed her wrist where her wedding band sat like a weight, and in her mind the image of her mother beside a younger Silas replayed over and over, continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart. What should I say? Talia asked. If someone asks how we met, Silas barely looked up from his watch. Tell them we connected through the Eldridge Museum. It's not a lie. A pause. Then I have a call in 5 minutes. We'll continue this tonight. He left without waiting for a reply. The moment the door shut behind him, Talia returned to the library, climbed the ladder again, and reached for what had started it all. She slipped the photograph into her pocket. Like a secret that didn't want to be held, she needed answers. And this finally was something real. Dinner that evening was quiet in all the wrong ways. Silas sat at one end of the long table, eyes fixed on his phone. Talia sat at the other, eyes on the flame of a single candle. Her thoughts fixed on the image, folded inside her coat. Her food sat untouched. You haven't eaten, he said suddenly. I'm not hungry. She pushed her plate aside. We need to talk. He glanced up. then froze the moment she placed the photograph on the table between them. For the first time since they met, his composure cracked, color drained from his face. "Where did you find that?" His voice, low and tight. "Behind a row of books, in your library." She held his gaze. "That's my mother, isn't it? And that's you in a hospital bed." He didn't speak at first, just stared at the photo like it had pulled him backward in time. Finally. "Yes." "Was she your doctor?" He nodded once. "Emergency trauma." "She was on shift the night I was brought in." His voice dropped quieter. "It was the night my parents died." The words hung there, suspended between the flicker of candlelight and the echo of breath. "What happened?" she asked gently. Silas stood, picking up the photograph. He didn't sit back down. A car accident. Storm, slick, roads. A drunk driver crossed the line. My parents didn't make it. He swallowed hard. "Neither should I have." His tone changed softer, distant. "The other doctors wanted to call it, said I wasn't going to survive the night. But your mother, she wouldn't let them." He looked at her now, eyes clouded. "She worked on me for hours. When I finally woke up, she was sitting beside me, smiling as if I'd done something remarkable." Talia blinked, quickly, tears burning her eyes. "That sounds like her," she whispered. "She always believed in second chances." Silas nodded. "I promised her, and that day, that I'd find a way to repay what she gave me. A second life." He met her gaze fully now, without armor. "I didn't know how, until I saw your name on the Eldridge documents. I saw your photo. Realized who you were." Her voice trembled, but her words were sharp. "So you decided to marry me, to pay a debt to a woman who's been gone for over a decade." He exhaled slowly. "It sounds ridiculous when you say it like that." "Because it is," she snapped, rising from her chair. Her confusion had burned away. What was left now was anger. "You could have made an anonymous donation, helped my grandmother, saved the museum, without dragging me into this." Silas's fingers closed around the photograph gently, like it was something fragile. "I didn't want to just help," he said quietly. "I wanted to be sure you were taken care of." Talia stepped back, her voice rising. "I'm not a lost child, in need of rescuing. I was surviving just fine before you decided to play savior." Their eyes locked, and for the first time she saw something break in him, not pride, not power, something human. "I never claimed my methods made sense," he said. "But my intentions were." "Good," she cut in. "Your intentions don't excuse the way you manipulated my life." She turned to leave. At the doorway, she paused. "The locked room in your wing," she said, without turning around. "Is that part of this too? Does that room have something to do with my mother?" His silence was louder than any answer. She gave a sad little laugh. More breath than sound. "I thought so." Her fingers brushed the edge of the doorway. "I'll see you tomorrow night, husband." And then she was gone, leaving him alone with the photograph and the ghost of a promise he had tried far too hard to keep. Continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart. "I'll smile, I'll hold your arm. I'll be every bit the perfect wife tonight," Talia said, her voice a quiet storm. "But don't mistake my performance for anything more than what it is, a role in the play you cast me in, all for the sake of a promise made to a ghost." She left the room, closing the door behind her, with a soft click that felt louder than a slam. The Harrington Foundation Gala had turned the Boston Museum of Fine Arts into a temple of opulence, glass gold, and carefully curated glances. Talia stood beside Silas at the grand entrance. Her midnight blue gown hugged her like armor. His tuxedo, sharp as ever, gleamed under the chandeliers. His hand rested gently at the small of her back. Their first real contact since the wedding. "Ready," he murmured. "As I'll ever be," she replied, her smile practiced. The first camera flash caught them before she could exhale. "Mr. and Mrs. Everhart. Everyone's dying to meet the woman who finally stole Boston's most elusive bachelor." Silas's arm subtly pulled her closer. My wife values her privacy, he said smoothly. But we couldn't miss supporting the Harrington Foundation. For the next hour, they played their parts, smiles, handshakes, toasts. Talia's cheeks ached from pretending. Silas moved through the crowd with ease, never letting go of her hand, her elbow, the space between them. To the world, they looked flawless, effortless, a perfect union. Silas, Everhart, you sly dog. The voice came from behind. Smooth, amused and edged with something colder, Silas stiffened before turning. Talia followed his gaze. A tall man stood there, dark hair, sharp, jawline. His resemblance to Silas was uncanny. Nathaniel Silas's voice lost its warmth. Didn't expect you tonight. Wouldn't miss it, Nathaniel said, smile, not quite reaching his eyes. He turned to Talia. You must be the bride. I wasn't invited to meet. He extended a hand. Nathaniel Everhart, the brother. No one brings up. Talia, she replied, shaking his hand. His grip lingered. Dominic never mentioned he had a brother. Nathaniel's smile widened. There's probably a lot he hasn't told you. His tone turned razor thin. Has he shown you the family secrets yet? We Everharts have quite the collection. That's enough. Silas's voice cut like a knife. It's never the right time with you, Nathaniel muttered, finally releasing her hand. We should catch up soon, sister-in-law. I have fascinating stories about how the Everhart Empire was redistributed after our parents passed. Before Silas could reply, another figure appeared. There you are, darling. A tall blonde woman with perfect posture slipped beside Nathaniel, her eyes landing directly on Silas. And you must be the new Mrs. Everhart, she said, tone smooth as silk. I'm Vivian Harlow. Nathaniel's smirk returned, Silas's ex-fiancée. He added almost cheerfully. Small world, isn't it? Talia felt. Silas's hand tightened slightly at her waist. Lovely to meet you both, he said coolly. If you'll excuse us, our table is waiting. He guided Talia away with quiet urgency, not stopping, until they reached a quiet alcove behind a marble column. Your brother's delightful, Talia said, her voice dry. Almost as charming as your ex. Silas exhaled slowly. Nathaniel hasn't been a part of my life in years. And Vivian and I ended things long before you and I ever met. She folded her arms. Another secret then. How many more am I supposed to pretend don't exist? He opened his mouth to reply, but a server arrived with champagne. Silas took 2 glasses, handed her one. This isn't the time, he said quietly. We'll talk at home. Talia took the glass, but didn't drink. We never talk at home. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. You disappear into work. You lock away rooms and memories, and you expect me to smile through every event like I'm part of a life I'm not allowed to understand. A muscle twitched in Silas's cheek, and for the first time under all the polish and the pose, his mask started to slip, continuing the story of Talia, Quinn, and Silas Everhart. I didn't realize this arrangement was such a burden to you, Silas said as they stepped away from the dance floor. Talia set her untouched glass of champagne on the nearest table. It's not the arrangement I can't stand, she replied, voice low. It's the lies underneath it. She didn't wait for a reply. I need the restroom, she said. I'll meet you at our table. Cold water ran over her wrists as she leaned over the marble sink, trying to still the storm inside her. Then the door creaked open. She glanced at the mirror and stilled Vivian. Harlow walked in like she owned the space. She reapplied her lipstick with deliberate grace. Marriage suits you, Vivian said lightly. You've got that newlywed glow. Talia gave a polite nod, reaching for a towel. She was already halfway to the door when Vivian's voice followed her like smoke. I wonder, though. Does he still wake up screaming? Talia froze. Excuse me. The nightmares, Vivian said, turning to face her. They were terrible when we were together. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, shaking, drenched in sweat, whispering your mother's name. Talia's throat went dry. What accident? Vivian's smile curved like a blade. Oh dear, he hasn't told you about the crash, about being the only one who survived, about the doctor who saved him. I know enough, Talia made for the door, but Vivian stepped into her path. Do you know he visits her grave every year? Your mother's grave, I mean. Talia's breath caught. Dominic is many things, Vivian said softly, but above all else, he's loyal. Especially to ghosts. How do you know about my mother? Talia whispered. Nathaniel told me everything, Vivian leaned in, voice velvet, and venom. How Dominic followed your life from a distance. How he threatened your museum just to force a meeting. How he built this entire marriage on a promise to a woman long gone. Talia shook her head. You're lying. Am I? Vivian tilted her head. Ask him about the locked room. Ask him what shrine he's built for Isabella Quinn. Then with a final glance at her reflection, she turned toward the door. We should get back. Wouldn't want our men to worry. When Talia returned to their table, Silas was mid-conversation with an older couple. His eyes lifted the moment he saw her. Something unreadable, flickering there. Everything okay? He asked quietly. She took her seat. I ran into Vivian. Her voice was even. She mentioned you visit my mother's grave every year. Silas stilled. This isn't the place I know. She picked up her menu and didn't speak again. They danced once that night. His hand rested at the small of her back, his body guiding hers across the floor with practiced ease. To the world they looked effortless, graceful, but under the surface, the distance between them felt like an ocean. The ride home was silent. Only when the gates of the mansion closed behind them did Silas finally speak Vivian lies. He said. The car stopped. Talia turned to face him. Was it a lie that you visit my mother's grave? Silas didn't look at her. No. Was it a lie that you sought me out deliberately? That you used the museum as a reason to get close? A pause? No. Those parts are true. Then what's in the locked room, Silas? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small silver key. He held it out. Come see for yourself. They walked in silence through the west wing, their footsteps echoing softly off polished wood. He stopped at the closed door, the one she had once tried to open. The key trembled slightly in his hand before he placed it in the lock. This room has been closed to everyone but me. For 15 years, he hesitated. What you find inside may change the way you see me. Talia met his eyes. I don't know you well enough yet to have a fixed opinion. He pushed open the door. It was not the shrine she expected. Not grand, not obsessive. It was small, quiet, personal. One wall held yellowed newspaper clippings about the accident. Another medical documents, hospital scans, surgical notes. In a glass case sat a few delicate objects, a cracked wristwatch, a pearl necklace, a gold wedding band. But it was the painting that caught her breath. A large portrait softly lit, Isabella Quinn, her mother, was in her doctor's coat, but in a moment of stillness, a half smile on her lips, warmth in her eyes, painted by hand by him. She stared at the painting, her mother, in a white coat, captured mid-smile, that familiar expression, one Talia thought she'd forgotten, now radiated from the canvas. With aching clarity, Silas's voice broke the silence. Low, measured, almost reverent. After the crash, I was in a coma for 3 days. Your mother stayed beside me the entire time. Even after her shift ended, Talia didn't look at him. Her eyes remained fixed on the portrait as her hand hovered near her mother's face, not quite touching it. When I finally woke up, he continued, she was reading to me, a book of poetry. Her voice was the first thing I heard. She swallowed hard. It's beautiful work. I commissioned it 5 years after she passed. The artist painted it from photographs. A pause, you visit her grave. Silas nodded. Every year. On the anniversary of the accident, he moved to stand beside her. She didn't just save my body, Talia, she saved my will to live. When I found out my parents were gone, I wanted to go with them. She told me I was still here for a reason. Tears welled in her eyes. That sounds like her. Her voice cracked, and she didn't try to hide it. The last time I saw her alive, I was 7. I barely remember the funeral. Silas's next words were softer still. I was there. She turned to him. Stunned, I stood in the back, he said. I didn't know she had a daughter until that day. A knock broke the moment they turned to find Mrs. Langford standing in the hallway, eyes tight with concern. Everhart. There's a package. It's marked urgent. Silas frowned. At this hour, the courier insisted, said it had to be delivered to you personally in the foyer. A small box sat on the entry table, wrapped in plain brown paper, no return address. Just his name, handwritten across the top. Silas opened it carefully. Inside a photograph, it was of him and Talia taken just hours earlier. As they arrived at the gala, a thick red X had been drawn over her face. Pinned to the photo was a small slip of paper. She'll end up like her mother, unless you walk away from Everhart Industries. All color drained from Silas's face, he turned sharply to Mrs. Langford. Get Marcus on the phone right now. Implement Protocol 7. Then he turned to Talia, his voice trembling. Not with fear, but fury. Pack a bag. We're leaving tonight. Why? He handed her the photograph. She stared, her stomach turned to stone. Because someone just threatened to kill my wife. They fled to his estate near Lake Wainbridge, secluded, silent, surrounded by pine trees and shadows. 3 days passed in a strange, tense limbo. Armed guards patrolled the property. Silas spent most hours locked in his office on endless phone calls. Talia was left with her thoughts and questions. On the 4th morning, she found him in the kitchen. His sleeves were rolled up, tie gone. The exhaustion in his eyes, deeper than anything he'd said. She poured herself a cup of coffee. Are you going to tell me what's going on? She asked gently. Or am I supposed to stay in the dark forever? He closed his laptop, looked up. Marcus is tracking the threat until we know who sent it. You're safer here than in Boston. And you, she stepped closer, noticing the tightness in his jaw. Hafim, the dark circles, the tension. He wasn't hiding anymore. When did you last sleep? He rubbed his face, weariness slipping through. I'm fine, you're not, he sighed. How are you holding up? The question, so simple, so unexpected, caught her off guard. She hesitated. I'm scared, Trushpers. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Not just about the threat, but what it means. She placed the photograph on the counter. She'll end up like her mother. She looked at him. That's not a random threat, Silas. That's personal. That's specific. His expression darkened. I know. His voice dropped low and cold, which means this isn't just about business anymore. Continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart. Whoever sent that threat, they knew. Talia's voice was quiet, but the weight behind it was heavy. They knew about my mother, about her connection to you. Silas's face darkened. Nathaniel seemed informed, she added. His expression shifted from shadowed to storming. Nathaniel gave up the Everhart name years ago. Why? Talia asked softly. What happened between you two? Silas stood abruptly. I have a video call in 5 minutes. We'll talk about this later, but later never came. By nightfall he was gone. A handwritten note left in his place. Business emergency. Stay inside. Back tomorrow. Guards stayed behind, armed. Silent, and Talia, once again, was alone, with her questions and the silence of a house that wasn't hers. Wandering the halls out of restlessness, more than curiosity, she discovered a small library tucked away behind a narrow hallway. Unlike the curated collection at the Cambridge mansion, these shelves held dog-eared novels, well-loved paperbacks, and a few children's books with cracked spines. Her fingers trailed along their edges, until they stopped at a familiar green spine, the secret garden, her mother's favorite. She opened it. Inside the cover, a soft inscription written in ink beginning to fade. To Dominic, May. May you find your own secret garden of healing, Isabella Quinn. MD Talia sank into a nearby chair, the book clutched to her chest, like it could quiet the ache in her ribs. It wasn't just a gift, it was a gesture, personal, intimate, more than doctor and patient. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mara. Check your email. Urgent. Talia opened it. There was only a link. Boston's most notorious gossip blog, and there beneath a banner of flashing ads and scandalous headlines were the images Silas Vivian entering a hotel, his hand rested at the small of her back, the same way he had touched Talia at the gala. The timestamp read last night, mere hours after he left her alone in the woods, surrounded by strangers with guns. She slammed the laptop shut, nausea rising like heat in her throat. Her phone rang. Talia, Silas said as soon as she picked up. No. Hello? No pause. I assume you've seen it. The photos? She said, her voice steady like ice. Yes, I've seen them. What a convenient business emergency. It's not what it looks like. Don't bother, she cut him off. Our arrangement never included fidelity. You owe me nothing, but you left me alone while you spent the night with your ex-fiancé. That's not what happened. It's exactly what it looks like, Silas. He lowered his voice. This isn't safe to discuss over the phone. She almost laughed. You want to talk about security now? Please wait until I return. We'll talk face to face. She didn't reply. The line went dead. She didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of his hand on Vivian's back flashed like a wound behind her eyelids. She hadn't married him for love, but somewhere along the way, she had started to hope, and that made the betrayal hurt more than it should have. By morning, her hurt had hardened into resolve. She packed a single bag. As she neared the front door, a guard stepped into her path. Mrs. Everhart. I can't let you leave. Mr. Everhart's orders. Talia stared him down. I'm not a prisoner, she said calmly. Either you drive me to the station, or I call the police and report that I'm being held against my will. Her voice didn't waver, and this time, no one dared stop her. 20 minutes later, Talia sat in the back of a black SUV, one of Silas's security vehicles. It moved steadily toward Concord trees, blurring past the window. From there, she'd catch a train, not to her apartment. Silas had been right about that, being the first place they'd check. She'd disappear somewhere else, somewhere quiet, somewhere he wouldn't think to look. Her phone buzzed again. And again, call after call, text after text, all from Silas. She didn't answer a single one. Instead, she focused on the quiet plan forming in her mind, an exit stitched from cash shadows, and her maiden name. By mid-afternoon, she was checked into a modest hotel just outside Cambridge, the name on the registry. Talia Quinn, the room paid in cash, her credit cards destroyed. She turned on the television for noise more than anything else, but then, breaking news, she froze. Dominic Everhart, CEO of Everhart Technologies, narrowly avoided injury today when his vehicle exploded just outside corporate headquarters. Smoke filled the screen. Sirens, twisted metal sources confirmed the explosion occurred just moments before. Mr. Everhart reached the car. Authorities are treating this as a targeted attack. Talia's blood ran cold. Her phone nearly slipped from her hand as she fumbled to dial his number. Voicemail again. Voicemail. Then a knock at the door. Sharp? Repetitive. She jumped. Housekeeping, a woman's voice called. No, thank you, Talia answered quickly, not moving, but the knocking continued. Firmer now, I said. She yanked open the door. Vivian Harlow stood in the hallway, perfectly styled, completely composed, as if explosions and betrayal were simply part of her afternoon plans. Hello, Talia, she said calmly. May I come in? We have things to discuss. You have some nerve, Talia hissed, starting to close the door. Vivian's voice stopped her. I know who sent the threat. And I know why Dominic and I were at that hotel. Talia's instincts screamed, don't trust her. But against better judgment, she stepped aside. Vivian entered, surveying the small room with faint disdain. Not quite the Ritz, is it? Her lips curled. Amazing how fast one falls from luxury. Talia said nothing. Vivian sat on the edge of the bed, like it belonged to her. I'm not here to gloat. I'm here to help you understand what you've married into, and I should believe you, because... Vivian crossed her legs. Because I was almost you. She held up her manicured hand, engaged to Dominic, weeks away from becoming Mrs. Everhart until I found out how the Everhart empire was really built. Talia crossed her arms. I'm sure you're about to tell me Vivian didn't flinch. Dominic forged evidence against his brother after their parents died, framed Nathaniel for embezzlement, then took the company for himself. Talia's stomach turned. That's a serious accusation. I saw the proof, Vivian said flatly. I confronted him days later. Our engagement was over. Quietly, neatly, like it never happened. It didn't fit, not with the man Talia had come to know. Secretive, yes, controlling sometimes, but coldly calculated. Still, she had only known him for weeks, and doubt was good at finding cracks. What about the hotel? Talia asked, voice sharper now. That photo was meant to humiliate me. A necessary illusion, Vivian replied. Dominic needed to meet with me without raising suspicion. He's been trying to buy my silence for years. She leaned closer, and today's car bomb. That wasn't random. It was a message from someone who's tired of being manipulated. Talia's throat tightened. Nathaniel Vivian nodded slowly. He wants justice. Not violence, but he knew how to get your attention. Talia stared. So, the photo? The threat. The line about me ending up, like my mother. Vivian's voice softened. A crude move? I won't defend it. But it worked, didn't it? Talia said nothing. Her heart was a battlefield, now caught between everything she feared and everything she no longer knew how to trust. Get out. Talia's voice shook, not from fear, but from fury. Vivian stood, not the least bit fazed. Don't be naive, Talia. Your husband isn't the hero of this story. She stepped closer, her heels silent against the carpet. Nathaniel can prove everything, the forged records, the stolen inheritance, even Dominic's unhealthy fixation on your mother. Talia froze. It was never about gratitude, Vivian continued. He didn't marry you to honor Isabella. He married you because you look like her, because you're all that's left of the woman he could never have. The words struck like a slap. Talia thought of the painting, the room, the grave, the inscription in the book. Could it be true? Had she married a man who wasn't in love with her, but with a ghost? Vivian placed a sleek business card on the nightstand. When you're ready to know everything, call me Nathaniel, has the documents. The truth? And then she was gone. Talia sank onto the bed, mind spinning. The TV still showed footage of Silas's car mangled and smoking outside Everhart headquarters. Reporters speculated about corporate enemies and criminal threats. Her phone buzzed. A message from a number she didn't recognize. He's alive, not hurt. He's looking for you, Marcus. Relief bloomed in her chest before she could stop it. And with it, confusion. If Silas truly was the villain, Vivian claimed, why did she care so much that he was alive? Another message arrived. You're not safe there. They'll find you. Let me help Marcus. She stared at Vivian's card. 2 people, 2 stories, each claiming truth, each offering protection, and both capable of lying. Then the hotel phone rang. Talia jumped. Mrs. Everhart. The front desk clerk sounded unsure. There's a Mr. Everhart in the lobby. He says you're his wife. Should I send him up? Talia closed her eyes. The decision when it came was quiet, clear. Tell him I have already checked out. She hung up, grabbed her bag, and slipped out the fire exit. Whatever the truth was about Dominic, about Nathaniel, about the Westcotts, it wasn't going to be handed to her. She would find it herself. Boston General Hospital, the archive wing, was buried beneath fluorescent-lit corridors and the soft hum of old machinery. At the front desk, Talia stepped forward, hands trembling. "I'm Dr. Isabella Quinn's daughter," she said. "I'm researching a personal matter. I'd like to see her records." The clerk's face softened. "Your mother was loved here. Her death was a real loss." She glanced around, then leaned forward. "Technically, you need admin clearance. But for Isabella's daughter," she slid a visitor badge across the counter. "Room B14, you've got 2 hours." The file room smelled like dust and time. Talia searched box after box until she found the one labeled Emergency Department 2010, the year of the crash. She opened it with reverence. 3 names stood out immediately. Richard Everhart, DOA Eleanor Everhart, DOA Silas Everhart. Critical, her mother had been the attending physician, just like he'd said. The face. The notes were clinical, but detailed multiple surgeries, internal trauma-induced coma. Prognosis, poor recovery, unlikely, and then a notation in her mother's handwriting. Patient's brother arrived, agitated, demanded access. Security called due to threatening behavior. Possible intoxication. Talia's breath caught. Nathaniel, he had been there, drunk, angry, unstable. She dug deeper until she found it. A police report attached with a paperclip. Continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart. The handwriting was unmistakable. Her mother's filed weeks. After the accident, caller identified as Nathaniel Everhart. Multiple threatening phone calls. Blames physician for his parents' death and brother's survival. Request for increased security logged. Talia stared at the page. Her heart hammering. Her mother had been afraid. Not just wary, not just unsettled. Afraid. Find what you need. The voice made her jump. A man in a security jacket stood at the doorway. Posture too sharp for hospital staff Marcus. She didn't need to ask. He nodded once. "Mr. Everhart's worried. You need to come with me." Talia clutched the paper tighter. "I'm not done here. You've seen enough." Marcus's tone was firm but not unkind. "Nathaniel Everhart isn't who you think he is." He stepped closer. "What you don't know is that he's been following you since the moment you left that hotel." Talia stiffened. "How do you know where I was?" Marcus didn't blink. "Because I'm good at what I do." He nodded toward the file. "Grab what you need. We leave in 5 minutes." She shook her head. "I'm not going back to Dominic." Marcus's gaze didn't waver. "You are?" "Because the alternative is letting Nathaniel find you. First," his voice softened slightly, "Everhart can explain everything, including those photos." 30 minutes later, Talia sat in the back of another black SUV hospital, files clutched to her chest like armor. Marcus drove in silence, eyes flicking to the mirrors every few seconds. "Where are we going?" "New location, Lake." "Property's compromised. How did Dominic find me?" Marcus glanced at her through the rear-view mirror. "He didn't. I did." A pause. "Vivian's assistant owed me a favor." Talia blinked. You followed Vivian. We've been monitoring her since she got back in touch with Nathaniel 6 months ago. The safe house turned out to be a modest but secure apartment tucked into a quiet Brooklyn street. When Talia stepped inside, Silas was pacing the living room. He stopped the moment he saw her. "You're safe." For the first time in days, something like relief broke through his usual calm, but Talia's eyes were cold. "No, thanks to you." She dropped her bag with a heavy thud. "I want answers, Silas. Real ones. No more riddles," he nodded. Slowly, "I know." "Start with the hotel," she demanded. Silas ran a hand through his already messy hair. "Vivian contacted me. Said she had evidence Nathaniel was behind the threats. We met publicly to avoid suspicion. And you didn't tell me because I didn't trust her, and I didn't know if it was a trap, he exhaled. I was right. She had nothing. She just wanted access to our systems, to our security network. She asked questions she shouldn't have known to ask. He gestured to the couch. Please sit. Talia stayed standing. Your brother thinks you stole his inheritance. Silas gave a humorless laugh. Let me guess. Vivian told you that. He shook his head. The truth. Nathaniel had been siphoning money from our parents for years to pay off gambling debts. After the accident, the board found records. He was removed, legally. Talia didn't respond. Silas's voice dropped. He blames me. And he blames your mother, her breath caught. Why her? Silas looked away. He was drunk that night. He wanted to drive. My father said no. Nathaniel stormed off. We left without him. A silence. He's convinced that if he'd been in the car, he could have saved them. So instead, he rewrote the story, turned guilt into blame. Blame into vengeance. Silas stepped closer, his voice now barely above a whisper. I've spent 15 years looking over my shoulder, but this time, he targeted you. That changes everything. Talia's knees gave way. She sank into a chair. At the gala, the note said, I'd end up like my mother. Silas knelt in front of her, his eyes dark and honest. Because the drunk driver who killed your mother wasn't random, the room shifted, tilted, her stomach turned cold. What are you saying? Silas's voice broke. I'm saying Nathaniel had her killed, continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart. She was the only witness. Silas's voice was quiet, like a thread unraveling. The only one who saw what he was really like that night. She filed reports. She was preparing to get a restraining order. Talia's hands were trembling. Silas reached out carefully, as though afraid he might startle her. His fingers hovered, then gently folded over hers. I couldn't prove any of it, he whispered until recently. Her eyes met his. So this marriage, she said slowly, was protection. He nodded once. When I learned Nathaniel was back in Boston, asking about you, watching you, I needed to create something that would keep you close. Safe. His grip tightened slightly, but what I didn't plan for was feeling. Her breath hitched. Feeling what? Their eyes locked, and in the silence between them, something passed. Something that had been there since the first cup of coffee. Since the first stolen glance across a diner, something fragile and burning and real. But before either could say it, a knock. Marcus entered. Jaw tight, voice grim. We have a problem. Nathaniel's gone public, Marcus said. He's accusing Everhart Industries of corporate fraud, stocks dropping fast. And he's named your wife Talia, blinked. Me. He claims you're in possession of documents proving everything. Silas stood. Immediately. What did you bring from the hospital? Talia moved to her bag, dumping its contents onto the table. Medical records spilled out along with a sealed manila envelope. She didn't recognize. She picked it up carefully. This isn't mine. Silas took it, eyes narrowing. Don't open it. His voice was suddenly sharp. Could be doctored evidence or worse. Marcus pulled a scanner from his pocket, running it over the envelope. A soft beep. No explosives, but there's something electronic inside. Silas's eyes darkened. Tracking device. He looked at Talia. That's how they followed you. Vivian must have slipped it into your bag when she was in your room. Talia sank onto the couch, sick with realization. I led them straight here. Silas knelt beside her. It doesn't matter. We'll handle it. He stood and dialed, putting the call on speaker. Diane, issue a statement. Deny everything. Standard protocol emphasized Nathaniel's past. The PR director responded instantly, already drafting it. But sir, he's going live on Channel 5, 20 minutes. He's claiming your wife is holding incriminating documents. Silas ended the call. Turning back to Talia, we need to stop this before it spirals. What exactly is he saying? She asked Silas, paced same. Same script he's used for years, that I framed him for embezzlement, that I orchestrated our parents' deaths, that I paid off the police, he paused. Only this time, he's added you to the list, claimed you found proof that you've turned against me. Talia rifled through the hospital files. Heart pounding, there's nothing here that supports him, just medical records, reports. Then she froze. She held up a police report. A sentence had been tampered with. This isn't right. My mother's original statement said, Nathaniel was drunk, but someone crossed it out, rewrote it to say, distraught. Silas took the page, examining it. This isn't your mother's handwriting. He turned to Marcus. Secure these. And get the car. We're going to the studio. Talia's head snapped up. What? Nathaniel's using your silence as proof. If you stand beside me, even if you don't say a word, it's enough to cast doubt on everything he claims. Talia's pulse quickened. I'm not going on television. You won't have to speak, Silas said gently. Just stand beside me. She stared at him. She had spent weeks questioning his every word, but in this moment she realized he wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for belief. Continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart. I'm asking for your trust one last time. Silas held her gaze, his voice steady, barely louder than a breath, but carrying all the weight of what came next. Talia nodded once. That was enough. The Everhart Media Center occupied the top floor of an unmarked building, gray and forgettable from the outside. But inside it buzzed like the control room of a spaceship. By the time they arrived, Nathaniel's interview was already playing. Across every screen, his face composed, his tone calculated, in his hand papers he waved, like proof. Fire in his voice. These documents clearly show that following our parents' deaths, Dominic Everhart manipulated the company's financial systems. He created false evidence, transferred millions offshore. The anchor looked appropriately stunned. These are serious allegations, Mr. Everhart. Your brother has always maintained your removal was justified, a convenient lie. Nathaniel cut in. One that started to unravel when a doctor named Isabella Quinn began questioning the official accident report. He turned to the camera, voice thick with implication. And now he's married her daughter, a twisted attempt to silence any truth she might uncover. Talia felt the world tilt beneath her. He's using my mother's death as leverage. Silas's jaw clenched. He always has. A poised woman in a sharp blazer approached them. You're up next. Same network live. Rebuttal. 5 minutes, Silas gave a tight nod, then led Talia into a nearby private office. Once the door closed, he turned to her shoulders, tense eyes raw. Before anything happens out there, I want you to know everything, she nodded. I'm listening. I didn't just find you because of your mother's legacy, he said. I've been protecting you from Nathaniel for years. Talia's brows pulled together. What are you talking about? Silas inhaled slowly. 3 years ago, he tried to offer you a job under one of his fake companies. You never saw the offer. I intercepted it. Then he tried to buy the Bolton Museum building last year. Her heart dropped. That was him. Every time he got close, I stepped in quietly. He's been circling you. Talia, because he knows the truth is tied to your mother, and that you might be the one person who could connect the dots. So, you married me to keep me close. He hesitated. At first, yes, but somewhere between our contract and tonight. His voice cracked slightly. Everything changed. A knock on the door broke the moment. 30 seconds. Mr. Everhart. The studio lights were harsh, the cameras unforgiving, the air stiff with anticipation. Silas sat beside her, his hand warm, gently brushed against hers under the table. Live, the interviewer wasted no time. Mr. Everhart, your brother just accused you of corporate fraud, and he implied that your marriage to Mrs. Everhart was strategic, that it was meant to cover something up. What do you say to that? Silas didn't blink. My brother has struggled with addiction and paranoia. For years, he said evenly. These fantasies are part of that decline. He turned slightly, reaching for Talia's hand, held it in his. As for our marriage, it is both personal and real. The interviewer nodded, moving forward. Nathaniel specifically stated that Mrs. Everhart discovered documents tied to a cover-up. Silas didn't flinch. It's true that my wife has been reviewing her mother's medical records, he said, and what she found only reinforces what I've always known. A pause. He met the camera directly. That on the night of the accident, Nathaniel Everhart was intoxicated. He was denied access to the car by our father, and in response became hostile. The attending physician, Dr. Isabella Quinn, filed formal complaints about his behavior. The interviewer leaned in. Are you implying your brother played a role in your parents' deaths? Silas exhaled slowly. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. His voice was steel now. Nathaniel was drunk and furious. He wanted to drive. When our father refused, he threatened, continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart, and hours later, our parents were gone. Silas's voice didn't shake. It was too steady, too calm, like a man walking across a glass, barefoot, refusing to bleed. As for Dr. Isabella Quinn's death, it happened under circumstances so similar. I couldn't ignore the pattern. I've been investigating in silence for years. The interviewer leaned forward, expression darkening. That's a serious claim, Mr. Everhart. Silas reached into his jacket, pulled out a flash drive, held it with quiet finality. And one I can finally prove. He set it on the table. This contains financial records linking Nathaniel Everhart to the man who drove the car that killed Isabella. I've already forwarded everything to the district attorney's office. The room went still. Talia sat frozen beside him, her entire world realigning. Her mother's death, the years Silas had watched from a distance, their strange, sudden marriage, all threads in one long, cruel tapestry woven by Nathaniel's hand. When they stepped outside the studio, the sky had turned violent. Rain whipped sideways. Silas answered a buzzing call, and his expression drained of color. He's gone, he muttered. Nathaniel? He left a message. This ends where it began. He's gone to the cliff. The road curled along the coast like a serpent of glass and memory. Rain lashed the windshield. Wind clawed at the car. Talia sat in the passenger seat. Heart pounding. You shouldn't be here, Silas said, knuckles white on the steering wheel. He's unpredictable. This could end badly. It involves my mother, she replied, her voice unwavering. I deserve to be there. Outside the ocean thrashed against jagged rocks. This stretch? Silas murmured. Right here? This is where it happened. The guard rail was weaker then. The car didn't even slow, it just went over. Headlights glinted ahead. A single car parked hazards, blinking in the storm like a heartbeat, lost in panic. That's his, Silas said. He pulled off the road careful. Stay in the car, no. Talia grabbed his arm. We do this together. The rain welcomed them, like a baptism. Soaked instantly, they made their way forward, boots sloshing through mud, and memory wind screamed across the cliffside, and then a silhouette, a lone figure at the edge. Nathaniel Silas shouted, Step back from the cliff, let's talk. The figure turned. Water streamed down his face, hair plastered to his skin, eyes wild. Still giving orders. Aren't you, big brother? Silas raised his hands. We don't have to do this. Nathaniel laughed bitter and broken. Now you want to talk? After destroying everything, after poisoning her against me, too. He gestured toward Talia, voice cracking. You turned her against me. Talia stepped forward. You did that yourself. My mother was scared of you. She documented everything, the threats, the nights she couldn't sleep. Nathaniel's eyes lit with fury. She let our parents die, he growled. But she saved him. She chose him. He pointed a trembling hand toward Silas. They were already gone when she got there, Silas said softly. There was nothing she could do, Lies. Nathaniel screamed. His hand disappeared inside his jacket and emerged with a gun. Talia gasped. Silas instinctively stepped in front of her. Put it down, Nathaniel. Please, it's over. The DA has everything. The payments, the records, the truth is out. The gun shook in Nathaniel's hand. It's never over, he whispered. Not until someone pays. Continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart, the gun dropped. Nathaniel's expression went blank, unnervingly, calm. Do you remember what Father always said? His voice was low, like a memory unraveling. Everharts finish what they start, Silas. Took a cautious step forward, rain slicking down his face. This isn't what they would have wanted. Nate, no response. Think about Mom, Silas continued. Can you imagine what she'd feel seeing you here like this? A flicker. Just for a second, in Nathaniel's eyes, doubt, pain, maybe even clarity. They loved you, Silas said. The addiction, the debt, it never changed that. They rewrote their wills, restructured the company not to punish you, but to protect you until you could come back to yourself. Shut up, Nathaniel's voice cracked as he raised the gun again. You're lying. Silas stood his ground. No, I covered for you for years. Nate paid off your debts, protected your name, shielded you from the board, from the media. But I couldn't protect Isabella. He took another step. She didn't deserve what you did to her. Nathaniel's hand trembled. She was going to the police, he whispered. I just wanted to scare her. Make her back off. The driver wasn't supposed to. His voice broke. He wasn't supposed to kill her. Talia froze, breath lodged in her throat. Her mother, the truth she had waited years to hear. Give me the gun, Silas said, his voice soft and steady. Please, it's time. Nathaniel's arm lowered slightly. Then he looked past Silas, his gaze locking onto Talia, and something in him twisted. You replaced me with her, he spat. Just like you replaced me in the company, in their hearts. Silas shook his head. No one replaced you. You walked away. Liar. In a heartbeat. Nathaniel lunged, gun raised. Silas reacted instantly, launching forward, tackling him to the muddy ground near the cliff's edge. Crack! The gun fired into the night. Talia screamed, running toward them as the brothers grappled, mud rain memory rage. All of it tangled in a brutal struggle, dangerously close to the edge. Another shot rang out into the sky. Stop, Talia's voice tore through the storm. Everything froze. In that second, the gun slipped from Nathaniel's hand, skidding toward the cliff's edge, vanishing into the sea below. Silas pinned him. It's over, he said, panting. Nathaniel stopped fighting. His limbs went slack, his face crumpled, like something long held had finally broken free. I just wanted them to love me, like they loved you, Silas's voice softened. They did. He paused, and despite everything I did too, sirens blew and red lights sliced through the storm. Marcus must have called them. Talia stepped back as officers moved in. Silas helped his brother to his feet, guiding him away from the cliff. What happens now? Nathaniel asked, voice small, like a boy lost in a memory he couldn't escape. You get help, Silas said. Real help. This time, as the police led Nathaniel toward the car, Talia turned to Silas. He was cradling his side, clearly in pain. Are you hurt? He gave a crooked smile, through the rain just bruised, and then something changed in his expression. The strength melted, the mask cracked. What was left was a man standing raw in the rain. I'm sorry, he said, for all of it. For not telling you everything, for dragging you into this mess. Talia stepped closer. You were protecting me, and maybe part of yourself too. He reached for her hand, eyes searching hers. I was terrified that if you knew everything you'd run, that you'd see how broken this family is, and you'd never want anything to do with the name Everhart again. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she let her fingers tighten around his, continuing the story of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart. Is that all? You thought I'd run? From Talia's voice was soft, almost lost in the sound of the rain still trickling down the rooftop above them. Silas met her eyes, soaked raw, unguarded. "No," he said quietly. "I thought you'd run. From me." From what I was beginning to feel, before she could respond, an officer approached gently but firmly, requesting their statements. And just like that, the moment faded into reality. Hours later, they stood again in the vast, echoing foyer of the Everhart estate. Exhausted, emotionally emptied, but lighter, somehow. The truth was finally free. Nathaniel was in custody, and the name Isabella Quinn, her story, her dignity was finally being honored. Silas turned to her, voice steady. "You're free now, Talia. The arrangement, the year-long commitment. After everything, I won't hold you to it." She looked at him, really looked, at the man who had once been a stranger behind a contract, and now stood before her as the man who'd held her hand through fire. "What if I don't want to be free?" she asked. A flicker of hope lit his eyes. "What are you saying?" She took a step closer. "I'm saying somewhere between convenience and chaos, something shifted. For both of us." He whispered her name like a prayer. "I married you to protect you." His voice cracked. "But I stayed because I was falling in love with you. With your fire, your honesty, the way you chased truth, even when it hurt." She touched the scar at his temple, faint but permanent, a reminder of the night tragedy tied their lives together years before. Either of them knew it. "Do you know what my mother used to say about fate?" she whispered. "That it brings people together at exactly the right moment, even if they don't recognize it." Then, "And do you believe that now?" She smiled softly. "I'm starting to." Their first real kiss was nothing like the awkward brush from their wedding day. It was slow, warm, and filled with every word they hadn't yet said. Her arms around his neck, his hands drawing her closer, two souls finding home in each other at last. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead gently against hers. "Stay with me," he said. "Not for a year, not for an agreement. Stay because you want to." "I want to," she whispered, "more than anything." That night they stood together in the room that had once been a shrine to the past. The portrait of Isabella still hung proud and luminous, but beside it now was a new frame, a photograph of Silas and Talia on their wedding day, a beginning born from broken things. Talia glanced around. "What happens to this room now?" Silas stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I was thinking, maybe someday it becomes a nursery." Her breath caught. "If that's something you'd want," he added gently. "Your mother gave me back my life. I want to build new life in her memory." Talia turned in his embrace. "Heart full, I'd like that too." Then she smiled. "But first we need to redo that wedding with real vows, ones we actually mean." 6 months later, under a sky painted with blue and light, they stood beneath the arch of ivy in the Bolton Museum gardens. The same museum that had once been on the verge of demolition, now blooming with new life. A new American modernism wing dedicated to Isabella Quinn, surrounded by friends, by warmth, by truth. They spoke their promises again, not from a script, not from fear, but from love. The final chapter of Talia Quinn and Silas Everhart's story, a path once carved by lost betrayal and long-buried secrets, had somehow impossibly led them here, to this garden beneath a canopy of soft lights and second chances. Silas held her hand, his thumb brushing gently over her knuckles. "You were never part of the plan," he said, quietly, slipping a new ring onto her finger. "You were the chapter I didn't see coming. But you became the whole story." Talia smiled through misty eyes. And in that moment, under moonlight, surrounded by warmth, by peace, she knew they had rewritten not just a contract, but a life. Later that evening, they danced slowly beneath the stars in the Bolton Museum gardens. Her head rested against his chest, steady to the rhythm of the heartbeat her mother had once saved, a heart that now belonged entirely to her. "Happy," he whispered against her hair. She closed her eyes, thinking of the little secret nestled quietly in her coat pocket. A test. 2 lines, a tiny pulse of new life waiting to be known. Tonight she would tell him that love had created more love, that the past had not ended them. It had made space for something new, more than I ever thought possible, she answered. Then she rose onto her toes and kissed the man who had once been nothing more than a name and a contract, but had become her safe place, her home, her once in a lifetime. As night fell over Boston, the old Everhart mansion stood radiant on the hill. No longer cold, no longer haunted. Its windows glowed with golden light. Rooms, open hearts, open. No more locked doors, no more secrets. Only the echo of laughter down the hall, the scent of something baking in the kitchen, and the quiet, steadfast certainty that even the most broken beginnings can lead to the most beautiful forever. Thank you for joining us for this story. A tale of wounds and wonder, grief and grace, and how sometimes the most unexpected person can become the love that changes everything. If this story touched your heart, made you believe in second chances, or simply reminded you of the beauty in being truly seen, please like, share, and follow. Shining Stories. Because here, every scar is honored, every soul is worthy, and every story matters.